I should have known better than to accept Karen Matthews' dinner invitation. In 15 years of marriage to her son David, she'd never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was beneath their social standing. But this year was different. My 8-year-old daughter Emma was finally old enough to understand her grandmother's cruelty, and that changed everything. The Matthews colonial mansion was decked out in its usual holiday excess: imported garlands, crystal ornaments, and a 12-foot tree that probably cost more than my first car. Emma's eyes widened as we walked up the snow-dusted path, her small hand clutching the carefully wrapped presents she'd helped pick out. "Remember, sweetheart," I whispered, straightening her red velvet dress. "No matter what Grandma Karen says, we hold our heads high." David squeezed my shoulder, his silent way of apologizing in advance for his mother's behavior. He'd grown up in this world of old money and social expectations, where worth was measured by bank accounts and family names. I'd marry him despite his family's objections, the small-town librarian who dared to love the Matthews hair. "Claire, darling, how practical your dress looks." Karen's voice dripped with false sweetness as she opened the door. She was wearing what appeared to be a new designer outfit, price tags probably still attached somewhere. "And Emma, don't you look comfortable?" Emma's smile faltered slightly, but she stepped forward bravely. "Grandma, I helped pick out your present." Karen barely glanced at the carefully wrapped package. "How sweet. Put it with the others, dear. The real presents are under the tree." The living room was already full of family: David's sister Amanda and her investment banker husband, their perfectly groomed twins, and his brother Michael with his third wife, all dripping in luxury brands and old money confidence. The children were comparing notes about their European vacations and private school adventures. Emma tried to join their conversation, but I watched as they supplely shifted away, already trained in the Matthews art of social exclusion. My heart ached, but I kept my face neutral. Soon, I thought, soon they'd all understand. "Present time," Karen announced after an elaborate dinner where she'd managed to work my modest background into every other sentence. The children gathered around the massive tree while Karen played Santa, deliberately saving our gifts for last. The other grandchildren received expensive electronics, designer clothes, and promises of trust fund deposits. Emma sat quietly, clutching her worn copy of The Secret Garden that she'd brought along just in case, a habit she developed after years of disappointing family gatherings. Finally, Karen lifted a battered cardboard box. "And for Emma, well, Claire, since you're always talking about the importance of reading, I cleaned out my attic. Found some old books that nobody wants anymore. Better than nothing, right?" The box was filled with yellowed, musty paperbacks, some with pages falling out. Emma's lower lip trembled as she lifted a water-damaged copy of Cinderella. "Thank you," she whispered, exactly as I'd taught her. Always gracious, always dignified. "Well," Karen smiled vindictively, "I know how tight things must be on a librarian's salary, especially since you insisted on sending Emma to that public school instead of accepting our offer to pay for Westbrook Academy." The room grew uncomfortable. Even Amanda had the grace to look embarrassed. "Actually, Karen," I said calmly, reaching for my phone, "your timing is perfect. I've been meaning to invite everyone to a special event tomorrow." "Oh?" Karen's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. "The library's having another used book sale." "Not exactly." I pulled up the invitation on my phone. "The library board is unveiling the new children's wing. I thought you'd all like to attend, being such supporters of education." "A new wing?" Karen scoffed. "In that tiny local library? How do they ever afford that?" I smiled, thinking of the sealed envelope in my desk drawer at home. It seems they had a very generous anonymous donor, someone who believes every child deserves access to beautiful new books regardless of their background. "Anonymous?" David looked at me sharply. After 15 years of marriage, he could read between my lines. "Well, it was supposed to be revealed at tomorrow's ceremony," I said, watching Karen's face. "But since we're family, the new wing is being named the Claire Matthews Children's Center. All $5 million worth of it." The room went silent. Emma looked up from her tattered books, confusion giving way to understanding. "$5 million?" Karen's voice cracked. "Did I never mention?" I said, my voice innocent. "My grandmother left me her publishing company shares when she died. I've been on the board for years. Anonymously, of course. Some of us prefer to help others quietly, without needing our names on everything. Karen's face went from red to white. The crystal champagne flute in her hand trembled slightly. But that's impossible, she stammered. You're just you work at. I work at the library because I love it, I said simply. Because every child deserves to feel the magic of opening a new book, not just those whose grandmothers can afford designer labels. Emma was staring at me with dawning pride. David's hand found mine under the table, squeezing it gently. The ceremony's at 10 tomorrow morning. I continued, standing up. Emma, sweetheart, let's leave those books here. I think you prefer the new collection we've ordered for the children's wing. First editions, leather-bound classics, and yes, Karen, even some signed copies from those authors you're always bragging about meeting at your charity events. Mom, Emma whispered as we gathered our coats, is that why you always said to be kind, even when people aren't kind to us? That's right, baby. I helped her with her scarf, aware that every eye in the room was on us. Because true worth isn't about how much money you have or where you come from. It's about how you treat others. As we walked to the car, David wrapped his arm around my waist. 15 years, he said softly. 15 years of watching my mother belittle you, and you never said a word about the company. Tomorrow's going to be interesting, I replied, helping Emma into the back seat, especially when the library director introduces me as the board president. Through the living room window, I could see Karen still standing frozen, the box of tattered books at her feet. Sometimes I thought, the best revenge isn't about money at all. It's about showing people that their worst behavior often reveals their own shortcomings, not anyone else's. Mom? Emma's voice came from the back seat as we pulled away. Can we really get new books tomorrow? Better than that, I smiled. You get to help choose books for other children who need them, because that's what really matters. The lights of the Matthews mansion faded behind us, but ahead, I could already picture tomorrow's ceremony and Karen's face when she realized just how wrong she'd been about the poor librarian all these years. The next morning dawned bright and cold. Perfect weather for new beginnings. I chose my outfit carefully. A tailored charcoal suit I'd been saving for this moment, accessorized with my grandmother's vintage pearl necklace. Emma wore her favorite blue dress, practically bouncing with excitement as we drove to the library. Will Grandma Karen really come? She asked, watching the familiar streets pass by. Oh, she'll come, David answered, adjusting his tie. Mom would never miss a chance to see if we're lying about something this big. He was right. When we pulled into the library parking lot, the Matthews luxury cars were already lined up. Karen's Mercedes, Amanda's Range Rover, and Michael's latest sports car. They stood in a tight cluster near the entrance, looking uncomfortably out of place among the gathering crowd of local families and library patrons. The library director, Margaret Thompson, rushed forward to greet us. Claire, thank goodness you're here. The press has arrived, and the mayor is asking about the speech schedule. Karen's head snapped up at Margaret's familiar tone with me. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the director usher us through the crowd, past the velvet rope that separated the VIP area from the general audience. Mrs. Matthews, Margaret nodded coolly to Karen. Your family seats are in the third row. Third row? Karen's voice could have frozen fire. There must be some mistake. We're Claire's immediate family. Margaret consulted her clipboard with exaggerated care. No mistake. The first row is reserved for the board president and major donors. You know protocol. I bit back a smile as Karen's face flushed. She'd spent years patronizing Margaret at community events, always making sure to mention her own social status. The ceremony began with the mayor's speech about community service and educational opportunities. I sat between David and Emma, watching Karen fidget in her third-row seat as speaker after speaker praised the anonymous donor's generosity. Finally, Margaret stepped up to the podium. And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes for our community, not just through her incredible donation, but through her daily dedication to sharing the joy of reading with every child who walks through our doors. Our board president and the namesake of our new children's wing, Claire Matthews. The applause was warm and genuine as I took the podium. Karen's jaw had dropped so far I worried she might need medical attention. Thank you, Margaret. When my grandmother left me her publishing company shares, she included a letter. It said, money can buy books, but kindness opens minds. I've carried those words with me every day as I worked at this library, watching children discover worlds between pages. As I spoke about the importance of accessibility to education and literature, I could see Emma beaming with pride. Behind her, Karen was whispering frantically to Amanda, probably trying to calculate exactly how much influence I actually wielded in their precious social circles. After the speeches during the reception, Karen made her move. She glided up to me with a completely transformed attitude, her society smile firmly in place. "Claire, darling," she gushed, air kissing near my cheek. "Why didn't you tell us? All these years we had no idea you were so involved in the community's development." "Didn't I?" I sipped my champagne. "I could have sworn I mentioned it every time you commented on my little library job." Before she could respond, the mayor's wife approached us. "Claire, the hospital board meeting has been moved to Tuesday. Will that work with your schedule?" "Perfect," I nodded. "I'll bring the Foundation's proposal for the new pediatric reading program." Karen's eyes widened further. Next came the university chancellor, discussing an endowment I'd established for literature students from low-income backgrounds. Then the head of the State Library Association confirmed my keynote speech at their annual conference. With each interaction, I could see Karen mentally recalculating 15 years of condescension. Every snide comment about my career, every helpful suggestion about finding a real job, every gift of discount store gift cards, all coming back to haunt her. Emma had found her confidence too. She was giving her cousins a tour of the new wing, proudly showing off the reading nooks and state-of-the-art storytelling area. The other children, who had ignored her just yesterday, now hung on her every word. "I still can't believe you never told them," David murmured, appearing at my elbow with fresh champagne. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. "Would your mother have treated Emma better if she'd known about the money? Because that would have made it worse, somehow." He nodded, understanding. We'd built our life on our terms, raising Emma to value education and kindness over social status. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about showing our daughter that quiet strength often speaks louder than grand displays of wealth. "Claire," Karen approached again, this time with an envelope in her hand. "About those books from yesterday, I feel just terrible. I'd like to make a donation to the library to show there are no hard feelings." I looked at the check she was trying to slip into my hand, then back at her face, the same face that had smiled while making my daughter cry over second-hand books just 24 hours ago. "That's very generous, Karen," I said clearly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "But perhaps instead of a donation, you could spend some time volunteering in our new children's wing. Read to the kids, help with homework, see firsthand how books can change lives regardless of their price tags." She blinked, startled by this suggestion of actual effort rather than a quick financial fix to her conscience. I'm not sure my schedule." "No pressure," I smiled. "The invitation stands whenever you're ready to make a real difference, not just write a check." As she retreated, clearly flustered, Emma ran up to us. "Mom, can I show Grandma Karen my special project?" "Please?" I nodded, curious. Emma took her grandmother's hand and led her to a wall of brand new books, each with a small golden plaque beneath it. "See?" Emma pointed proudly. "Every time someone donates books to kids who can't afford them, they get their name on a plaque. Mom says it's not about how much the books cost, but about sharing them with others." Karen stood there, staring at the wall of donor plaques, finally understanding what she failed to teach her own children about true value and dignity. Sometimes the best lessons come from those we've underestimated the most. The aftermath of the library ceremony rippled through the Matthews family like a stone dropped in still water. The first changes were small but noticeable. Karen stopped posting about her charity galas on social media. The designer shopping bags disappeared from her weekly visits to Amanda's house. And most surprisingly, she signed up for the library's weekend reading program. I discovered this last detail when Margaret called me one Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after the ceremony. "Claire, you need to see this," she said, trying to contain her laughter. "Your mother-in-law is in the children's wing, reading The Paper Bag Princess to a group of kids, and she's doing all the voices." I had to see it for myself. When I arrived, there was Karen Matthews, her perfect manicure gesturing animatedly as she read about a princess who didn't need fancy clothes to be worthy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma was there too, helping younger children with their craft projects. When she saw Karen reading, she gave me that wise little smile that children sometimes have when they understand more than adults expect. "Mrs. Matthews has been here every Sunday this month," Margaret whispered. She brought in her entire collection of first editions to donate, said something about books being meant for reading, not collecting dust. The real breakthrough came at Easter. Instead of her usual formal dinner at the mansion, Karen suggested a family picnic at the park near the library. She even packed the food herself, something I'd never seen her do in 15 years. As we spread blankets on the grass, Emma pulled out a wrapped package from her backpack. "Grandma, I got you something." Karen opened it carefully, revealing a copy of Little Women, not a valuable edition, but a well-loved paperback with a handwritten note inside. "For Grandma," Karen read aloud, her voice catching. "Thank you for showing me that people can change their story anytime they want. Love, Emma." I watched as Karen hugged our daughter, really hugged her, perhaps for the first time. David squeezed my hand, and I knew he was seeing what I saw. Is mother finally understanding that legacy isn't about money or status, but about the stories we choose to write with our actions? "Claire," Karen said later, as we packed up the picnic, "the library's scholarship committee is reviewing applications next week. I was wondering, would you mind if I helped? I'd like to learn more about what you do." "The committee meets Tuesday mornings," I replied. "We could have coffee first, if you'd like." And so began our new chapter. Karen and I started having weekly coffee meetings before library committee sessions. She never directly apologized for the years of subtle cruelty, but her actions spoke volumes. She volunteered regularly, learned every child's name in the reading program, and even started a book donation drive in her social circle. One day, about 6 months after the Christmas incident, she asked to speak with me privately in her house. In her study, she unlocked an antique desk drawer and pulled out a familiar-looking box. "I kept these," she said quietly, showing me the tattered books she'd given Emma that Christmas night, "as a reminder of who I don't want to be anymore." She lifted each book carefully. "I use these to try to make a child feel small. But Emma," she showed me how to make others feel big instead. "She gets that from you, Claire. She gets it from watching everyone around her learn and grow," I corrected gently. "Even her grandmother." Karen smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "The library's annual fundraiser is next month. I was thinking, instead of the usual silent auction items, what if we did something different? A reading marathon, maybe? Get pledges for each book completed." I nodded, thinking of how far we'd come from designer labels and social hierarchies. Emma would love to help organize that. That evening, as Emma got ready for bed, she asked me a question that showed just how much children absorb from the adults around them. "Mom, remember when you said true worth isn't about money? Is that why you let Grandma Karen be mean for so long? Because you knew she could learn to be better?" I sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the kindest thing we can do is give people space to realize their own mistakes. Grandma Karen needed to learn that lesson herself. Like in my books," Emma yawned. "The characters have to figure things out on their own." "Exactly like that," I said, kissing her forehead. "Every story has its own pace." Later, I found David in his study, looking at old family photos. "You know what's amazing?" he said, pulling me close. "In all these pictures, Mom's smiling, but she never looked happy. Not like she does now, reading to kids at the library." I thought about Karen, about Emma, about the power of stories to change people. The tattered books that were meant as an insult had become a catalyst for transformation. Sometimes the happiest endings come from the most unexpected beginnings. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's watching someone learn to write a better story for themselves. Next week, Karen's hosting a book club at her house. The first selection? The Secret Garden, Emma's Choice. A story about growth, change, and the magic of giving people second chances. Some might say we gave Karen more chances than she deserved. But as I always tell Emma, the best stories aren't about deserving. They are about becoming.